All right, so for today's explainer, we're diving into a story that sounds, well, almost made up. It's about a relationship that is on the absolute brink of collapse, all because of a vacation sunburn. We're going to look at how something that seems so small can actually be the thing that blows a huge problem wide open.
I mean, seriously, can it? It sounds completely ridiculous, right? But what we're about to see is a classic case of the tip of the iceberg. This sunburn is just the tiny, ridiculous part you can see above the water.
So, let's set the scene here. Our storyteller is a 26-year-old woman, and she was really genuinely falling for her new boyfriend. You know the feeling. She said he checked all the boxes. Everything was new, it was exciting, all the signs of a great new romance. And things move pretty quickly. They meet, the feelings get serious, and by July, they're officially a couple. Then, just 1 month later, in August, they decide to take their first big trip together, a 2-week vacation. This was supposed to be a huge positive step for them. Instead, it became the breaking point. And that brings us to the vacation itself. We're calling this section the tip of the iceberg for a reason, because the sunburn, as bad as it was, wasn't the real issue. It was just the first sign of trouble that popped up above the surface.
The problem started literally on day one. Before his skin was even an issue, he drops this little bombshell on her. He doesn't trust her in her own apartment because she has a male neighbor. I mean, talk about an immediate red flag. It just casts this shadow of jealousy and insecurity over the whole trip right from the jump.
But then, things went from that kind of emotional, psychological bad to physically way, way worse. On the second day of their island vacation, he puts on sunscreen, just one time, gets a terrible burn, and by day 3, it's not just a sunburn anymore, it's full-blown sun poisoning, and his sickness completely torpedoed the rest of the trip.
And just to be super clear, we're not talking about a little discomfort. He had a fever, he was confused, he had painful blisters, and, the real vacation ender, constant diarrhea. He was literally running to the bathroom during tours, at dinner. The trip they had planned was, for all practical purposes, over.
And this was the moment. This was the turning point for her. As she's sitting there, alone at restaurant tables while he's off being sick, this one thought just crystallizes in her head. How can a 27-year-old man not know how to take care of himself? And in that moment, everything about how she saw him started to change.
So that thought makes her start asking bigger questions. Was this just a fluke? A really stupid one-time mistake? Or was this part of a pattern? This is where she starts to look beneath the surface of that iceberg.
She starts wondering, was he just some guy who made a dumb mistake with sunscreen? Which, hey, can happen. Or was there something more to it? And her mind pretty much immediately started connecting the dots to some other stuff that had happened recently.
And her memory immediately lands on this thing from right before the trip. He had promised to help her move, but he cancels on her an hour before he was supposed to be there. Why? Because he had managed a work project so poorly he had to stay up until 4 a.m. just to finish it.
And suddenly, the light bulb just goes off. She sees the connection. These weren't two totally separate screw-ups. One was a failure in his professional life that directly impacted her. The other was a failure in basic personal care that ruined their vacation. The common thread here? A total lack of foresight and responsibility.
But as she keeps thinking about it, she starts to realize the problem goes even deeper than him just being careless. The sunburn didn't just expose his irresponsibility, it also started to shine a spotlight on some other, more fundamental flaws in his character.
And get this, think about how he reacted to his own mess. While he's derailing their expensive trip because of his own mistake, he actually joked that his mom wouldn't let him outside again. Instead of owning it, he kind of framed himself as this little kid who needs his mommy to look after him. It just screamed immaturity.
So you can see where this is all headed, right? This story is no longer about a guy who forgets to put on sunscreen. That's just a symptom. It's about his character, his maturity, and really, his ability to just function as an adult partner. So when you pull all these different pieces together, the picture starts to look pretty alarming. You've got the irresponsibility both at work and with his health. You've got the immaturity in his jokes, the jealousy he showed on day one. And then, oh yeah, there was one more piece, and this one might be the most serious of them all.
And that final piece was a total financial bombshell. After the trip, he finally admits that he never actually had enough money for their vacation in the first place. He just pretended he did so they could do all these extra things. This wasn't just being careless anymore, this was straight up deception.
And the deception had real consequences for her. He had actually pressured her into doing these extra activities that she had specifically said she wanted to skip to save money, only to turn around after it was all over and ask her to pay him back for them. He totally manipulated her financially and just walked all over her boundaries.
Okay, so let's put this all together. What started out as a kind of funny, kind of weird story about a sunburn has now morphed into a story about responsibility, maturity, trust, and honesty. We are no longer just looking at the tip of the iceberg. We are seeing the entire, massive, dangerous thing that was hiding underneath the water.
And the contrast is just so stark. On one side of the balance sheet, you have that initial excitement, right? The feeling that he checked all the boxes. But on the other side, you've got this mountain of hard evidence, a clear pattern of irresponsibility, immaturity, jealousy, and financial dishonesty.
And that's her big realization. The man she thought she was falling for, well, he didn't really exist. The last couple of months hadn't changed him. They had simply revealed who he was all along. And once she saw that, her attraction to him just, poof, it vanished completely.
Which brings us right back to where we started. After seeing all of that evidence, let's ask that question again. Is this story really, truly, about a guy who got a bad sunburn on vacation?
Of course not. The sunburn was never the problem. It was the catalyst. It was just the loud, dramatic, painful event that she couldn't ignore, and it forced her to finally see all the massive underlying problems that had been there the whole time.
In the end, our narrator is left with one last question, a question she's asking herself, but really, she's kind of asking us too. After seeing the whole picture, the carelessness, the immaturity, the deception, she asks, am I being too harsh? And you know what? That's a pretty good question to think about.